everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I am going to make a really quick Aperture card. Aperture cards were huge back in the day and I thought I had a few in stash, so I thought I would actually grab them and just use them. So the stamp set I'll use for the sentiment is the Birthday Blitz from Simon Says Stamp, and this stencil that I'm going to use for the Aperture card is from the latest I think it's the February 2026 club kit from Spellbinders, and it's the foil and press kit that has a stencil that coordinates with the press plates. So I'm going to show you how to use those in a second, but before I do that, I've opened up my Aperture card, and so the section that is the Aperture, I'm just adding some tape down the sides to protect the back and inside, what will be the inside and back of the card, so that I can just ink up a background stamp to just lay that onto the Aperture section. So that was a lot of words, but basically you're masking off the section that you don't want ink on, so that you only get it where you want it. And so because it's an Aperture card, I had no idea where the Aperture was actually going to lay, so I just inked up the stamp all, as much over it as I could, so that I can just get enough ink on there to hopefully get the Aperture itself. I'm not worried if it's perfect. It can be a bit distressed, it doesn't bother me. And so there we have the sort of scripty words. I think this is it's a Hero Arts background stamp. I can't for the life of me, it's not the Nevermore one, because I do love that one. It's kind of a scripty love note kind of thing, but it doesn't look like that. Like you can't really read it, but it looks like scripty writing, which is just really pretty and soft. And I thought it lent itself well for a spring themed kind of card, even though we're going to make this into a bit of a birthday card. So but I thought it was bright and fun and just gentle, and I don't know, just nice. So what I'm going to do now is take some inks. I'm using Lawn Fawn inks today. I have a little stash of the mini ink cubes, so I thought I may as well use those, make use of them. I've got them, and I'm going to layer up each of the stencils and ink each layer in a different color. So I've got 2 shades of green for the leafy bits, and I have 2 shades of, I think, sort of a purpley color for the flowers themselves. These are tulips, and then I used a very pale blue for the Aperture background stamp. So on each of the stencils, there are actually 5 layers to the stencils, and so each of them has a number in the corner, which hopefully you would have seen that earlier. And so it's easy to line up in the same place, and also to know which layer you're layering on as you go. So for this first layer, I'm using a very pale, I can't remember the name of the colour, but a pale green, and then I will have a slightly darker green to go over the top for the next layer, just to helps to give it a bit of depth and dimension. I could have also done all the leaves in this pale green, and then, did I say yellow earlier? In the pale green, and then use the darker one just to bring up the darker color from the bottom or the base of the leaves. That would also give it nice dimension. But on this next layer, you can see that it layers up. There's a lot of layers in this. It layers up quite nicely and quite easily with the previous stencil. So once you've got that first base down, layering them up is really easy, and as you build up the layers, it becomes even easier to see which stencil goes where. But if you work in number order, then it's really easy, really easy. So the next color, I think this was Noble Fir. It's just a darker green that I've layered up and just inked. Once you've got that in place, it's just easy. It makes life so easy. I do clean off this one because those flowers are kind of near the green inky bit, so I didn't want to get a bit of green into my my nice purpley flowers. So I do clean that up, but really, if you keep going, you'll see some of them I don't even clean off until right at the end, which I'll do obviously off camera. I won't make you watch me clean them. But for this one, I needed to, just because of how close the two pieces are. So you can see where the sort of flower heads are. So getting the next layer layered up and lined up so that I can do the, I think it's the paler colour of this sort of purpley pink kind of colour that I'm going with here. And I'm going to layer up use the pale version for this first section here, and I'm going to go very lightly, because actually there's 3 layers to the tulips, so I'm going to go very, very lightly with this first one. Then I'll use the same color on the next layer, and go slightly darker, and then I have a different ink, which is a darker ink. I just didn't have enough variety, but if you have ink, just talking about this, if you have 1 or 2 of a color family, so like reds or pinks or yellows or whatever, and you don't have enough of a range of like depth of color, if that makes sense, so like a light to dark, a light, medium, dark, that kind of thing, you can still use whatever color you have. You can still do just depends how much pressure you put on when you're inking. You could have a lighter version, then a slightly darker version, and an even more deeper version of that color, just by how much pressure you put on to when you're layering up with the ink, and you're using your ink blending tools or your brushes or whatever it is. So that's all I did for the first 2 layers, because I only had the one shade of that particular purple. I didn't have a middle purple color, like a medium. Had a light and a dark. So I made it work, and it looks really pretty. It still shows the depth in that, so I thought it worked out quite nicely. So I'm very proud of myself. While I'm here, I also am using, there is another video that I have on my channel where I show you why I do what I do here with the Tim Holtz stamp platform, and that is a Altenew stamp wheel insert. It's like a big piece of photopolymer basically, and so it's my sticky grid if you like, and so I keep it in there all the time, and I just use it for my stamping. If I need to use it, red rubber stamp or something, I'll just take it out, but mostly this is how it sets up, and then it's nice. I can take the lid off and I can use it like I've been showing you in the video. So back to the video, or the card. I felt there was too much sort of white dead space at the top, even when I closed the aperture. So I have taken the cloud that was in the stamp set that I'm using for the sentiment, and I used the same blue ink that I used on the front. I think it's Moonstone, if I'm right in thinking that. It's the same ink color from the what I used on the stamp for the aperture, and I just sort of randomly popped some clouds there. It works. So and it doesn't matter on the inside so much, because the aperture is going to be stuck flat, so that cloud on that edge, inside edge of the aperture, is not gonna, you're not going to see that, so that's not an issue. But that's why I keep checking, opening it, checking it, closing it, just keep doing your checks, and then you'll be fine. So now that I have the background sorted for what I wanted, I'm now going to take the sentiment, and actually I changed my mind. I had one idea in my head of what sentiment I wanted to use, and I was going to use that along the aperture itself. I think I was going to put it at the bottom. I chose not to do that because I felt like there was still quote unquote dead space inside the aperture area. So I folded the card up, used my magnets and the sticky grid to hold it in place, because obviously the aperture has 3 folds, so it's not stuck together, so it would kind of flap about. And then I'm lining up my sentiment, and I want to get my sentiment where I would have it in place. If I try and do this without the aperture as I'm doing it now, then there's a chance, and there's a big chance with me because I don't line things up straight. We all know this if you've been here long enough. So there's a chance that I won't line it up where I want it within that aperture. So that's why I chose to do this. It just makes it easier. It took a few goes to get the sentiment stamped because there's a lot of layers, and there's also magnets in the way and things like that. So but this is the nice thing about having some sort of stamp platform, whether it's your Tim Holtz one if you've got this still, or the Misty, that kind of thing, or even the stamp wheel from Old New, which I can't justify the price. Like, my brain goes, I really want one, but I can't. I just can't right now. Anyway, so now that I've done all the inking and got my sentiment and all that sort of fun stuff, I'm literally taking some tape around the edge of the aperture itself, not over the score lines, because part of this card is actually going to be your card, and so adding the adhesive, getting the backings off, and then I'm going to carefully fold the aperture, the pretty bit, onto the back of the aperture, just like this, and that just folds it flat. And these kind of cards, if they're pre-scored and made, they do you'll see the inside piece will be slightly narrower than the main card so that it fits in there. So there you go, very simple, bright, fun birthday card, but it's got a spring vibe to it, and I love it. I was really chuffed with it. I had to get back in the zone with this, so this was a fun way to start. So I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. Thanks as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.